Child, what is this delicacy?
That's an ice cream.
It tastes good. Your figures are disgusting. Go sit in the corner and cry.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you.
Take this and study.
Alright, figure drawing, let's go. Part 1, proportions. Proportions are like subjective. They vary from person to person and they are like not written in stone, and every artist draws slightly different proportions. Like some artists like to draw bigger legs, some artists like to draw bigger arms, some people like to draw bigger heads. Okay, so the hips or the crotch area divides the body into perfect halves, and then the knees divide the legs into perfect halves, then the chest or the nipples divide the upper part of the body into perfect halves, then the elbows divide the arm into perfect halves. Okay, in an adult male, the shoulders are wider than the hips, so the hips are actually slightly shorter than the shoulders, and in an adult female, the hips are slightly wider than the shoulders. The same proportions apply for an adult male and adult female. It's just that there are some differences between men and women, so keep that in mind. So at least for me, the proportions according to the heads is confusing, so that is why I do not use the heads as a guideline for proportions. Rather, it's better to just eyeball stuff. Okay, so moving on to 12 years, like almost teenager level. The legs are slightly shorter than the whole upper body, so remember that. And the hips and shoulders are of the same length, because in women the uterus is not developed until they are like 16 or 18 years of age. Okay, so at the age of 5 to 6 years, the legs are even shorter and the crotch moves even lower than the halfway. And in an infant, the legs are like tiny, like the upper body is 2/3 of the legs. So the legs are like 1/3 of the whole length of the body. And use this as only as a guideline, as a general guideline. Proportions can of course vary very widely, as I mentioned before. And it is always better to just eyeball and go with what looks right.
You there, subscribe and join the Patreon and Discord, or I'll never teach you.
Okay, body structure. As I mentioned in the face tutorial, the head is made up of a spear, a cylinder for the cheeks, a tapered cylinder or cone for the jaw, and a cylinder for the neck. Okay, so the neck basically a cylinder. The torso is divided into 3 parts. A box for the chest area, a cylinder for the abdomen area, and literally a underwear shape for the pelvis area. The arms are one cylinder for the upper arm and another one for the forearm. Then the joints are structured as spears. Then the hand is made up of one rectangle and the fingers are made up of cylinders. Then the legs, the upper leg or the thighs and the lower leg are made up of 2 cylinders. And the foot is made up of a cube, same goes for the fingers. And here I've shown it in the 3/4 view so that you can have a better understanding of how the body is structured. So basically we constructed the body using basic shapes. So that is the most important part. You want to construct the body into basic shape so that the body is broken down into its simplest form. Okay, now the hands and feet. The palm is structured as a cube, the wrist is structured as a spear, and the fingers are structured as cylinders. Now I like to make the thumb as a cube because I think that has more stylization. The foot is made up of a big rectangle, rather 2 rectangles, one for the heel and one for the front of the foot. And the fingers are made up of cylinders, a cube for the toe. So try to construct the body into basic shapes so that it becomes easier for you to construct when you're drawing from imagination or from references. Okay, basic anatomy shapes and muscular structure. So the rib cage is simplified into dome shape, then the hips are simplified into a disc shape, the arms and legs are simplified into like basically sticks. Okay, now talking about the landmarks of the body, the clavicle is very essential, the hip bone is very essential, and all of the joints are very essential. So keep that in mind because they will help you in constructing the figure more accurately. Okay, now from the side view, the spine has a curve and the hips actually protrude backward because of that curve. The clavicle is an important landmark because it shows where the shoulder should be placed. The front of the hip bone actually protrudes out. So from the side view, that is very essential. Okay, now moving on to the basic shapes for the muscles. The neck is of course a cylinder, then the trapezius are two triangles, chest is a rectangle as I mentioned before, but along with that rib cage it becomes like a book, so you can draw that like a book. Then the abdomen is a cylinder and the pelvis is basically an underwear literally. The thighs are cylinders and the knees are cylinders as well. The legs are cylinders but they have a bulge in the center, and the feet are as usual two cubes. Shoulders are triangular shape, and the biceps and forearms are cylinders. The forearms have a bulge in the center, same as the lower leg, and the hands are of course cubes. Fingers are cylinders. Then from the side view, the rib cage is conical shape, the abdomen is slanted at the top or cut at the top, and the underwear shape of the hips. So that spine curvature is very essential to show, because without that spinal curvature the figure will start looking weird and not real or not natural. Okay, from the back side, the trapezius muscle is like a polygon in shape, like two triangles joined together. The latissimus dorsi muscle is like almost a rectangle. The hips are pushed backwards because of that spinal curvature. Okay, so everyone is made up of different body shapes and everyone has different body types. So when drawing figures, we should always keep in mind and respect those body shapes and types, because that helps us differentiate everyone differently and not draw the same figure again and again and again. The three main important body types are the square, the circle and the triangle. So the square indicates stability and strength, the circle indicates comfort and friendliness, and the triangle indicates some edginess, speediness and danger. All these characters in the reference, they are made up of various different body types, like no character is the same as the other character. Okay, now for the muscular structure. So in the neck, the sternocleidomastoid is the most important muscle. It runs from the back of the head or the side of the head with the front of the clavicle, and then there are trapezius muscles which join the neck and the shoulder. Then the arm is literally like a chain intertwined into each other. The front of the arm is made up of biceps and the rear of the arm is made of triceps. The side of the arm is made up of a muscle called as brachioradialis and it inserts at the side of the upper arm. Then the deltoids or the shoulder muscles are almost like a triangular shape which join the pectoralis major or the chest muscles. The pectoralis muscles insert inside or under the shoulder. Okay, now for the torso. The torso, as I mentioned before, the pectoralis is like a book. The latissimus dorsi comes and wraps around at the side of the body. Muscles on the rib cage are called as serratus anterior muscles because they look like teeth, so they are like serrated and then they are joined to the external and internal oblique muscles which are at the sides of the abdomen. The center of the abdomen is called as the rectus abdominis, which are made up of 4 small muscles in each row, and the external and internal oblique is then joined to the gluteus maximus and the gluteus minimus and the pelvic muscles. Okay, from the back side, the trapezius is like almost a triangular shape, then it is joined to the back of the skull. Then there are like shoulder blade muscles. Then the latissimus dorsi muscle is almost like wing shape and which actually covers up almost the entire of the back till the lower part of the back, which then attaches itself to the gluteus muscles. And the oblique muscles wrap around the body and join at the back side. Moving on to leg muscles. So the thigh is made of 3 muscles which are all part of the quadriceps. Then the inner of the thigh is the adductor longus muscle, which is very important to show while drawing the figure because that shows the proper makeup of the thigh. Then there is also the sartorius muscle which comes from the side of the thigh and joins at the inner area of the knee. The gluteus muscle is slightly seen from the side view. Then the lower leg muscles are major majorly two: the tibialis anterior and posterior, and the gastrocnemius muscle, which are present at the back of the leg. Okay, now for the back of the leg, the major muscle group is the gluteus muscle, which your bum is made up of. The back of the thigh is made up of bicep femoris and semitendinosus muscles, which are tubular in shape, and the adductor longus is of course an important muscle which is important to show. Then the lower leg is made up of two muscles, which is gastrocnemius and soleus muscle. The soleus muscle sits inside the gastrocnemius, and the gastrocnemius muscle is joined to the heel by the Achilles tendon. Okay, so I wanted to cover female breasts also because they are an important topic while drawing the body. So they are basically like a teardrop shape. Each breast is like a teardrop shape, and they sag because of gravity. Now every breast size is different from person to person. If the breasts are bigger, then they press against each other, thus creating that iconic pinch. Okay, finally moving on to gesture. So gesture is literally everywhere. Everywhere you see, there is gesture. The face has gesture, the eyebrows have gesture, the eyes have gesture, the mouth has gesture, even the nose has gesture. So whenever someone is making an expression on their face, always look out for the gesture. Then the hands have gesture, feet have gesture, everything has gesture in life. Okay, so while drawing gesture, there are a few guidelines that you should always keep in mind, or rather these guidelines apply to when drawing literally anything and everything. Always draw in C, SS and I's. So C curves, S curves and I curves, and with one confident stroke, not chicken scratchy lines or broken lines, etc. One of the most important parts of gesture is force. Always have force and energy in your gestures and drawings. Now, what do I mean by that? When you draw a C curve or an S curve, there is a force that pushes or makes the C curve in that direction, or pushes that C curve in that direction. So without that force, your drawings will not have the energy that is required or the fluidity that is required. So always keep in mind, always use force. Refer to Mike Mattesi and his force drawing series of videos and books because he explains it like really well. I will link him down in the description, so refer to him. Next up is curves versus straights. Always remember that. So whenever you draw a curve, you combine that with a straight somewhere else. It is mostly at the opposite end of that curve, but it can also lie adjacently. So how do you apply curves with a straight? So let's say there is a spear. So the spear looks boring, so why don't we apply some movement to it, or rather some shape to it? So you almost make it like a triangular shape like I've shown. So there is a curve at the top and a straight at the bottom, so that it appears that it is sitting firmly on the ground. Same goes for the cube. The side of the cube is pushed, so there is a curve at the side and the other side is straight. And this is applying to basic shapes, so apply it to basic shapes first so that you can then apply it to more complex stuff later on, which becomes much more easier. Okay, next is off balance and asymmetry. So if you see the human body carefully, there is always off balance and asymmetry to each and every part of the body. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So let's take a glass of water. So when you see a glass of water and the water is still, it appears to be boring. Like there is no story to it, or there is no excitement to it. Okay, but when you move that water slightly above or below or however you want, it becomes more exciting. And so in figures, there is always that asymmetry. If the shoulders are dipping down on one side, then the hips should come up from that same side. So that is that asymmetry that I'm talking about. Okay, and same goes for all the muscles. Okay, now the last part, which goes hand in hand to force, and that is exaggeration, which is another most important topic of gesture. Let's say you have a circle, you want want to exaggerate that circle. Okay, you want to tell a story that the circle is dropping firmly to the ground, so you exaggerate that motion. You almost make the circle completely flat, completely touching the ground. So that is that exaggeration that is needed. Even when doing drawings or illustrations, that exaggeration or that action should be shown, so that the drawing becomes more alive rather than looking stiff. And always exaggerate slightly more than what you see. So look at that pose, look at that cat pose, how I exaggerated that spinal cord. That gives the pose or whatever shape, that energy that is needed for that activity or something that that person is doing. Okay, so moving on to actually drawing the figure using gesture. So there is always the line of action, which is that red line that indicates that how the pose is positioned and how the pose is moving in space. Drawing that line of action is always important. Then of course you construct the body using simple lines and simple shapes, and adding the skeleton on the second part. Moving on, adding shapes and more three-dimensional parts of the human body, the more muscular parts, and then finally adding the actual body or the actual body shapes and the clothes on top. Okay, now for some gesture practice. So these are like 10 maybe 20-second sketches, so these will help you loosen your hand a bit, loosen your brain and your hand. So these are very essential to practice every day, like for maybe 5 maybe 10 minutes at most. I do 10-20 sketches like this and you're good to go. Alright, silhouette. Okay, so the silhouette of the body must always be readable. If it's not readable, then the pose will not appear good enough, no matter how much detail you put into that. So always keep that in mind whenever you are posing characters or whenever you're posing figures. So in this example, I wanted to show this example because the pose is already boring and the silhouette itself is boring, but still it is readable because she is facing almost to the side. But when I face her to the front or to the back, I do not know what side I'm facing on, if she is facing the front or if she is facing the back. I do not know that. So that is why the silhouette should be readable, because then you are able to read the pose very quickly, even from very far distances. Okay, finally we are at the end, taking some references from Pinterest or from Google and drawing them as you see them. So the first girl is facing forward. That is an unconventional pose and kind of like very hard to draw, but I think I did a pretty good job at it. I was like a bit rusty, so they are like kind of a bit stiff according to me at least, but I think I did a pretty good job. And always keep in mind when drawing poses or drawing anything, always keep your hand loose and always moving. Okay, so the next part I wanted to go even further beyond and simplify and stylize some characters or references using simple primitive shapes. Okay, the first guy is like a rectangle shape. He almost looks very buff, and which is probably the most fun part, because this is where you have to shut down your brain and just go with it. And then I forgot to record that, but I'll still explain what decisions I've made along the way. So that snaky girl is almost like a snake shaped or like an S shape, so there are a lot of triangles, so I have kept that triangular shape in mind and then designed her. Then the fat woman is of course made of circles, which is probably hard to draw because circles are uncertain and I do not like to draw circles and circular shapes, but I think I did a pretty good job at it. Okay, for the last figure I wanted to get that hourglass shape more prevalent, so I took a reference of a very thin woman and then made her like slightly hourglass shape with many triangles. I think it turned out pretty good.
The ice cream was good, huh? Yes, child, it was very good. So, when are you going to tell me about your story? It is not the time, child. or you're not ready yet? Oh, well, okay. I mean, I'm not in a hurry, so it's fine. Guess we'll have to wait for some more time. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe so that you can stay updated with future videos and future whatever shit I will post over here. And the first video is doing like pretty well. I hope that it blows up soon, so maybe give it a watch. Okay, it will be timestamped right over here, I don't know. And yeah, join the Discord and Patreon so that you can have fun and we can be brain dead together, because I'm sorry I had to do it. Anyways, see ya, bye. The ice cream is good, by the way.